I stayed quiet while my mother announced I'd be paying for my sister's wedding. Not because I was scared. Not because I agreed. Because 3 weeks earlier, I'd gotten a phone call that flipped my entire world upside down, and none of them knew about it yet. Let me back up. My name is Natasha Bennett, and if you've ever been the kid your family forgets about, you'll understand exactly what I'm about to tell you. The dinner happened on a Thursday night in Princeton, New Jersey. My mother picked the place, one of those Italian restaurants where the napkins are cloth and the waiters move like they're in a ballet. She loves spots like this because they make everything feel official. Important. Final. My sister Lauren sat across from me, practically glowing. She's engaged now, and when you're engaged, everyone treats you like you just won the lottery. Her fiancé Mark kept squeezing her hand, looking at her like she might disappear if he blinked. My dad stared into his wine glass. He always does that when he knows something bad is coming but doesn't want to be the one to stop it. We made it halfway through our entrees before my mother set down her fork, dabbed her lips with that fancy napkin, and smiled at me. That smile. I knew it instantly. It's the one she uses when she's already made a decision and now she's just informing you about it. Natasha, she said, voice sweet as honey, since you're doing so well with your career now, it only makes sense that you cover the wedding expenses. The entire table went silent. Lauren blinked. Mom. No, no, my mother continued, waving her off like she was swatting a fly. Your sister can afford it. Connecticut venues are incredibly expensive, and family should help family. That's what we do. Every single person at that table turned to look at me. They were waiting. Waiting for me to do what I always do, laugh awkwardly, make some excuse, apologize for existing outside their expectations. I set my fork down. And I said absolutely nothing. My mother leaned forward, eyebrows raised. Natasha. I met her eyes. Didn't smile. Didn't frown. Just looked at her. The silence stretched out like a rubber band about to snap. Lauren shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable now. Mark cleared his throat and studied his plate like it held the answers to the universe. Finally, my dad muttered, maybe we shouldn't be talking about money at the dinner table. But my mother wasn't finished. She never is. Your sister worked so hard for years, she said, her voice taking on that guilt-trip tone I knew by heart. She deserves a beautiful wedding. And honestly, Natasha, it's the least you can do after everything we've done for you. There it was. The script. The guilt. The expectation. I nodded once, pushed my chair back, and excused myself to the restroom. Inside, I stared at my reflection in the mirror. Calm. Unreadable. Not angry. Not hurt. Focused. Because what my mother didn't know, what none of them sitting at that table knew, was that I'd already stopped being predictable. They thought I worked some consulting job in Boston, Massachusetts. In their minds, I was still the middle child who moved away, kept to herself, and never caused problems. The one they could overlook because Lauren always needed more. More attention. More money. More validation. They had no idea what was actually happening. When I came back to the table, dessert menus had been placed in front of everyone, but the mood was ruined. My mother watched me like she was trying to solve a puzzle she didn't realize had missing pieces. I'll think about it, I said evenly. Lauren smiled, relieved. My mother exhaled, looking victorious. They thought they'd won. They had no clue that the money they wanted so desperately was already sitting in an account with my name on it. And here's the part that's going to make you understand why I stayed silent that night. 3 weeks before that dinner, I got a call from a law firm in New Haven, Connecticut. Not my parents. Not Lauren. Just me. And what they told me changed everything. The lawyer's voice on the phone was professional. Distant. Like he delivered life-changing news every day and this was just another Tuesday for him. Ms. Bennett, we're calling regarding the estate of your late grandmother, Dorothy Bennett. I remember sitting down slowly. My grandmother had passed away 2 years earlier. The funeral was small. Quick. My mother handled everything and told us there wasn't much to settle. I'm sorry, I said, confused. I thought everything was already taken care of. Most families believe that, he replied. But your grandmother established a trust that was kept separate from her primary estate. Very separate. And according to the documentation, you're listed as the sole trustee. My heart started pounding. What kind of trust? It's tied to a land parcel in Wyoming. Your grandmother purchased it decades ago, 1987, to be exact. She never developed it. Never spoke about it, from what we can tell. But 6 months ago, an energy company approached us about leasing the land for a new project. I couldn't breathe. How much are we talking about? He paused. Then he said a number that made my hands go numb. Enough to fund a wedding 10 times over. Enough to change my life. Enough to finally, level the playing field I'd been losing on my entire existence. Why me? I asked. Why am I the trustee and not my mother? Another pause. Your grandmother's instructions were very specific. She named you directly in 2019, shortly before her health declined. There's a letter attached to the trust documents. We can send everything to you by courier if you'd like to review it privately. I agreed immediately. 2 days later, a thick envelope arrived at my apartment in Boston. I locked my door, sat on my couch, and opened it with shaking hands. The legal documents were dense and confusing, but the letter was in my grandmother's handwriting. Natasha. If you're reading this, it means you've learned about the land. I bought it when your mother was young, intending to pass it down someday. But over the years, I watched how things unfolded in our family. I saw who got help and who got forgotten. You remind me of myself. Quiet. Observant. Underestimated. I know what it feels like to be invisible in your own family. So I made a choice. This is yours. Not theirs. Use it however you see fit, but don't let anyone convince you that you owe them something you earned by surviving what they put you through. Love, Grandma Dorothy. I read it 3 times. Then I opened my laptop and started searching. That's when I found the other documents, the ones the lawyer hadn't mentioned yet. Old bank statements. Small transfers. Dates that lined up perfectly with the year I graduated college. The year my parents told me there was no money to help me get started. The year I worked 2 jobs just to afford a security deposit while Lauren got a car, an apartment, and a furniture allowance. I traced the transfers carefully. They came from accounts connected to my grandmother's estate, accounts my mother had access to as the primary executor of Grandma's will. Small amounts. Withdrawn carefully. Just enough to avoid raising red flags. My mother had known about my grandmother's money. She just didn't think anyone would ever find out. And she definitely didn't expect that one day, I'd be the one holding all the cards. I closed my laptop and sat in the silence of my apartment. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt since childhood. Power. Comment below, if you discovered your family hid money from you, would you confront them immediately or wait? Tell me what you'd do. Growing up, I learned that love in my family came with conditions. Lauren got praised for everything. Good grades. Celebration dinner. Made the cheerleading squad. New car. Got accepted to college. Family group chat full of congratulations and pride emojis. Me? I got a nod. Sometimes a good job if I was lucky. I'm not exaggerating. When I graduated high school with honors, my mother's exact words were, "Well, you've always been self-sufficient." Self-sufficient. That was the label they stuck on me when I was barely old enough to understand what it meant. It became my identity. The kid who didn't need anything. The one who figured things out alone. The one who could be forgotten at family events because she'd be fine. When I was 16, I wanted to join a summer art program. It cost $1,200. I saved up $700 from babysitting and asked my parents if they could help with the rest. My dad looked uncomfortable. My mother sighed like I'd asked her to donate a kidney. "Natasha, we just paid for Lauren's volleyball camp. Money doesn't grow on trees." Lauren's camp had cost $2,000. I never brought it up again. College was worse. I got into a decent school in Massachusetts. Nothing Ivy League, but solid. I was excited. Nervous. Hopeful. During my senior year of high school, my parents sat me down for the money talk. "We need to be realistic," my mother said, hands folded on the kitchen table. "We don't have the funds to help you the way we'd like to. You're going to need loans. Maybe a work-study program." I nodded. I understood. College is expensive. Then, 6 months later, Lauren got into a school in Connecticut. Suddenly, money appeared. My parents covered her first year's housing deposit. Bought her a laptop. Gave her a credit card for emergencies. Helped furnish her dorm room with matching bedding and decorative pillows. I worked overnight shifts at a grocery store to afford my textbooks. When I brought it up once, just once, my mother looked at me like I'd slapped her. "Lauren needs more support, Natasha. She's not as independent as you. You've always been able to handle things on your own." Translation: you're easier to ignore. I stopped asking for help after that. I worked 2 jobs through college. Took extra shifts during holidays when everyone else went home. Graduated with debt that took me 5 years to pay off. And the whole time, Lauren got birthday checks, surprise Venmo transfers, and a reliable safety net. Nobody ever said it out loud, but the message was clear: I wasn't worth the investment. So I learned to survive without them. I moved to Boston after graduation. Built a career in consulting. Made my own connections. Stopped calling home except for major holidays. They barely noticed. At family gatherings, conversations revolved around Lauren. Her promotion. Her relationship. Her engagement. Her future. When someone asked about me, my mother would say, "Oh, Natasha's doing her own thing up in Boston. She's always been independent." There was that word again. Independent. It's not a compliment when it's used to justify neglect. Sitting in my apartment with my grandmother's letter in my hands, I finally understood something. She saw it. She saw everything. And she made sure that when it mattered most, I'd have something they couldn't take from me. Something they couldn't explain away. Something that proved I wasn't invisible after all. I didn't want to believe my mother had stolen from me. Even after reading my grandmother's letter. Even after seeing the trust documents. Part of me still wanted to think there was some reasonable explanation. So I did what any person drowning in confusion would do. I pulled out every old financial document I'd kept from the past 10 years. I'm not naturally organized, but something made me keep those papers. Bank statements from my first checking account. Letters from my college financial aid office. Even a few birthday cards with checks that had long since been cashed. I spread everything across my living room floor and started comparing dates. The trust documents showed my grandmother's accounts clearly. There were 2, one that went through probate when she died, and one, the land trust, that stayed separate. The probate account was the one my mother had access to as executor. I grabbed a notebook and started tracking transactions. May 2018, $1,200 withdrawal. 3 days before Lauren's graduation trip to California. August 2018, $2,500 withdrawal. 1 week before Lauren got her gift car. December 2018, $800 withdrawal. Right around the time Lauren needed her security deposit. My hands started shaking. I cross-referenced the dates with my own life. May 2018, I was working doubles to save for a laptop because mine had died and I couldn't afford a replacement. August 2018, I asked if they could lend me $500 for a root canal. My mother said they were stretched thin. December 2018, I was sleeping on an air mattress because I couldn't afford real furniture yet. The pattern was everywhere. Every time Lauren needed something, money appeared. Every time I asked, I was told the well was dry. But the well wasn't dry. My mother just chose who got to drink from it. I found more. Small transfers labeled as family support and emergency assistance. Dates that lined up with Lauren's needs but never mine. The largest one made me sick. June 2019, $5,000 withdrawal. That was the summer I'd called home, crying, because I'd been laid off from my first job out of college. I'd asked if I could move back home temporarily, just 2 months, while I found something new. My mother said they'd converted my room into a craft space and it wouldn't be practical. I ended up subletting a couch in someone's apartment and eating rice and canned beans for 8 weeks. That same summer, Lauren got $5,000 to pursue her dream of becoming a photographer. She bought an expensive camera and took exactly 11 photos before giving up. I sat on my floor surrounded by paper and felt something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't neglect. This was intentional. My mother knew where the money was. She knew my grandmother had resources. She had access to some of it through the probate estate. And she made a choice. She chose Lauren. Every single time. But here's the thing about choices. They have consequences. And my mother made one critical mistake. She never expected my grandmother to make a choice too. I booked a flight to Wyoming the next morning. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't ask permission. Didn't second-guess myself. For once in my life, I was doing something purely for me. The flight landed in a small regional airport. I rented a car and drove 2 hours into country I'd never seen before. Flat land stretched forever. The sky felt bigger somehow, like it had more room to exist out here. The GPS led me down a dirt road that seemed to go nowhere. Then I saw it. The land wasn't impressive in any flashy way. No buildings. No signs. Just open space bordered by wooden fence posts that had weathered decades of storms. But standing there, wind whipping my hair across my face, I felt something shift inside me. My grandmother had stood here once. Maybe in this exact spot. She'd looked at this same sky and made a decision that would reach across time to protect me. I walked the property line slowly. The energy company's equipment wasn't installed yet, just survey markers and orange tape indicating where future work would happen. I pulled out my phone and called the lawyer. "I'm here," I said. "On the land." "What do you think?" he asked. I think my grandmother knew exactly what she was doing. He was quiet for a moment. Then, she updated the trust documents multiple times over the years. Each time, she made sure your name stayed as trustee. Even when your mother suggested alternative arrangements. My breath caught. My mother tried to change it. Twice. In 2017 and again in 2019. Your grandmother declined both times. Said the designation was intentional. I closed my eyes. Grandma had known. She'd seen my mother's attempts to control the money, and she'd blocked them. She'd protected me even when I didn't know I needed protection. There's one more thing, the lawyer continued. Your grandmother left a voice recording with her final documents. Would you like me to send it to you? Yes. The file arrived in my email 20 minutes later. I sat in my rental car, surrounded by Wyoming silence, and pressed play. My grandmother's voice filled the space. Older. Weaker than I remembered. But unmistakably her. Natasha, if you're hearing this, you've probably figured out what your mother did. I want you to know it's not your fault. Some people believe love means holding on tight. I believe love means knowing when to let go, and making sure the people who deserve freedom actually get it. This land is yours. Not because you earned it, but because you survived without it. That's the difference between you and your sister. You know how to stand on your own. Now you get to choose whether you want to keep standing alone, or use what I've given you to build something better. Either way, it's your choice. Not theirs. Never theirs again. The recording ended. I sat in that car and cried for the first time in years. Not sad tears. Relieved ones. I flew back to Boston on a Sunday. By Monday morning, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to confront anyone. Not yet. Because here's what I'd learned from being ignored my whole life: people reveal themselves when they think you're not paying attention. So I decided to pay very close attention. Lauren called me Tuesday afternoon, voice bubbling with excitement. Tasha. Oh my God, I'm so glad you picked up. I've been looking at floral arrangements and I need your opinion. Do you think peonies are too basic? Mark says they're classic, but I want something that feels unique, you know? I sat at my desk, laptop open to the trust documents, and smiled. Peonies sound beautiful, I said. Right? Okay, and then there's the venue situation. Mom found this place in Hartford that's absolutely gorgeous, but they're asking for a deposit by next weekend. She paused. I know Mom mentioned the budget thing at dinner. I just want you to know I didn't ask her to do that. I know, I said, keeping my voice steady. It's just that Mark's family is helping with some stuff but not all of it, and Mom thought since you're doing well. It's fine, Lauren. Really? Let me look at my finances and we'll figure something out. The relief in her voice was immediate. You're the best. Seriously. I'll send you the venue links tonight. She hung up happy. I stared at my phone for a long moment. Part of me, a small, exhausted part, felt guilty. Lauren wasn't the villain here. She'd just been handed advantages her whole life and never questioned why. But another part of me, the part that had eaten ramen for months while she got birthday money, stayed firm. Over the next 2 weeks, I played the role perfectly. I attended a dress fitting. Smiled at bridesmaid options. Gave opinions on cake flavors. Nodded along when my mother sent me spreadsheets breaking down costs. We're thinking $50,000 should cover everything, she'd said during one phone call, casual as if she were discussing grocery lists. That's reasonable for a Connecticut wedding. $50,000. The amount I'd paid in student loans over 5 years. Let me see what I can do, I'd replied. My mother's satisfaction practically radiated through the phone. I knew you'd come through. Family takes care of family. I started noticing other things too. During a venue visit, my mother made a comment to the wedding planner, my youngest daughter is funding this. She's very successful. Youngest. Not middle. She'd erased my existence even in casual conversation. At a tasting event, Lauren's future mother-in-law asked about me. And what do you do, Natasha? Before I could answer, my mother jumped in. Oh, she does some consulting work. Nothing too exciting. Lauren's the one with the real career path, she's in marketing management. Lauren looked uncomfortable but said nothing. I smiled politely and changed the subject. But I was keeping score now. Every dismissal. Every redirect. Every moment I was minimized. Then, 1 week before the wedding, something shifted. Mark stopped showing up to family planning sessions. He's just stressed about work, Lauren explained, but her voice carried an edge I hadn't heard before. At a rehearsal planning meeting, I watched him step outside to take a phone call. He was gone for 20 minutes. When he came back, his face looked strange. Worried. My mother noticed too. Everything all right? Fine, he said quickly. Too quickly. I filed that away. Because something was happening beneath the surface of this perfect wedding. And I had a feeling it was about to intersect with my own plans in ways none of us expected. My mother's satisfaction practically radiated through the phone. I knew you'd come through. Family takes care of family. I started noticing other things too. During a venue visit, my mother made a comment to the wedding planner, "My youngest daughter is funding this. She's very successful." Youngest. Not middle. She'd erased my existence even in casual conversation. At a tasting event, Lauren's future mother-in-law asked about me. "And what do you do, Natasha?" Before I could answer, my mother jumped in. "Oh, she does some consulting work. Nothing too exciting. Lauren's the one with the real career path, she's in marketing management." Lauren looked uncomfortable but said nothing. I smiled politely and changed the subject. But I was keeping score now. Every dismissal. Every redirect. Every moment I was minimized. Then, 1 week before the wedding, something shifted. Mark stopped showing up to family planning sessions. He's just stressed about work, Lauren explained, but her voice carried an edge I hadn't heard before. At a rehearsal planning meeting, I watched him step outside to take a phone call. He was gone for 20 minutes. When he came back, his face looked strange. Worried. My mother noticed too. Everything all right? Fine, he said quickly. Too quickly. I filed that away. Because something was happening beneath the surface of this perfect wedding. And I had a feeling it was about to intersect with my own plans in ways none of us expected. Drop a comment. Have you ever pretended everything was fine while planning your next move? Tell me how it went. Chapter 7, The Cracks Begin. Word count, 550 words. My father called me on a Wednesday night, which was unusual. We didn't talk much. Our relationship existed in polite territory, birthday texts, holiday phone calls, surface-level questions about work. "Natasha," he said when I answered. "Do you have a minute?" I set down the book I'd been reading. "Sure. What's up?" He was quiet for a few seconds. I could hear him breathing, like he was gathering courage. "Are you really okay with all this? The wedding expenses, I mean." My heart rate picked up. "Why do you ask?" "Because your mother keeps talking about it like it's already settled, and I just..." He trailed off. "I wanted to make sure you weren't being pressured into something you can't afford." It was the most direct concern he'd shown me in years. "I'm handling it," I said carefully. "That's not what I asked." I closed my eyes. For a brief moment, I considered telling him everything. About the trust. About the money. About what I'd found in those old bank statements. But I didn't. "Dad, if I couldn't handle it, I'd say something." He sighed. "You've never been good at saying something when you should. You just disappear. Go quiet. Handle things alone." The observation stung because it was true. "I learned that from watching everyone else get what they needed," I said, sharper than I intended. Silence on the other end. "I know your mother has her ways," he finally said. "And I know things haven't always been fair. But she does love you, Natasha." She just doesn't always show it well. I wanted to ask him why he'd never intervened. Why he'd watched me get overlooked and said nothing. Why love only counted when it was convenient to mention. Instead, I said, "I know, Dad." We hung up shortly after. But the conversation left me unsettled. 2 days later, Lauren showed up at my apartment unannounced. I opened the door to find her standing there with coffee and pastries, looking nervous. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside and let her enter. She set the coffee on my kitchen counter and turned to face me, arms crossed. "I need to ask you something and I need you to be honest." "Okay. Do you hate me?" The question caught me completely off guard. "What? Do you hate me?" "Because ever since that dinner, you've been acting. I don't know. Different. And I can't tell if you're mad at me or at Mom or just at the situation." I stared at my sister, this person I'd grown up beside but never really knew. "I don't hate you, Lauren. But you're upset." I chose my words carefully. "I'm tired of being the one who's expected to fix things without anyone asking if I need fixing too." Her eyes got watery. "I didn't know you felt like that. You never asked." She flinched like I'd slapped her. We stood there in my tiny kitchen, years of unspoken feelings hanging between us. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "I never wanted you to feel invisible. But I did. I do." She nodded slowly, wiping at her eyes. "Mark's parents pulled some of their funding yesterday. His dad lost a big client. That's why he's been weird lately." My stomach dropped. "How much did they pull?" 20,000. Which meant my family now expected me to cover even more. Lauren left 20 minutes later, and I sat alone in my apartment, staring at nothing. The wedding was in 5 days. And everything was about to fall apart. I wrote the email at 2 in the morning. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't stop thinking. Couldn't shake the feeling that if I waited any longer, I'd lose my nerve. So I opened my laptop and started typing. Subject: regarding the Bennett family trust. I didn't lead with emotion. Didn't accuse anyone. Didn't apologize. Just facts. To whom it may concern. I'm writing to inform relevant parties about a family trust established by Dorothy Bennett in 1987. This trust, separate from her primary estate, involves a land parcel in Wyoming currently under lease to an energy development company. As of 3 weeks ago, I was notified by Bennett and Associates legal firm that I have been named sole trustee of this trust, as per Dorothy Bennett's explicit instructions updated most recently in 2019. The trust assets are substantial and were intentionally kept separate from probate proceedings following Mrs. Bennett's death in 2023. I'm sharing this information now because there have been recent discussions regarding financial obligations and family expectations that appear to be based on incomplete information about available family resources. For questions regarding the trust structure, management, or distribution, please contact Bennett and Associates directly. I will be making decisions about the trust's usage according to the wishes outlined in Dorothy Bennett's personal letters and legal documentation. All relevant legal paperwork is attached. Respectfully, Natasha Bennett. I attached scanned copies of the trust documents. The lawyer's letter. The timeline of account access. Everything except my grandmother's voice recording. That was mine. My finger hovered over the send button. This was it. Once I pressed this, there was no taking it back. No pretending. No more playing along. My family would know I'd been sitting on this information for weeks. They'd know I'd watched them make plans and assumptions while holding all the cards. They'd know I hadn't been powerless at all. I thought about my father's phone call. Lauren's tears in my kitchen. Even my mother's brief moment of vulnerability when she'd mentioned how proud Grandma would be. Then I thought about the bank statements. The no money excuses. The years of being invisible. I pressed send. The email whooshed into the void at 2:47 a.m. I scheduled it to arrive in everyone's inbox at 8 a.m. the next morning, exactly 2 days before the rehearsal dinner. Then I closed my laptop, climbed into bed, and slept better than I had in months. When I woke up the next morning, my phone was already buzzing. 17 missed calls. 12 text messages. 3 voicemails. I made coffee first. Then, slowly, I started reading. The rehearsal dinner was held at a restaurant overlooking the Connecticut River in Hartford. White tablecloths. Candlelight. A private room with windows that framed the water perfectly. My mother had spared no expense on this part. Probably because she'd assumed I'd be covering it. I arrived exactly on time, wearing a navy dress and the calmest expression I could manage. The room went silent when I walked in. Lauren stood near the bar with Mark, both of them holding wine glasses they clearly weren't drinking from. My father sat at a table in the corner, looking older than I remembered. And my mother stood in the center of the room like a general whose army had just retreated without orders. Natasha. Her voice could have frozen water. Mom. I smiled politely and moved toward the seating area. We need to talk. Now. We're about to sit for dinner, I said. Can it wait? Her jaw tightened. No. It cannot. Mark's mother approached nervously, clearly sensing the tension. Is everything all right? Everything's fine, my mother said through a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Just some family business to sort out. Will only be a moment. She grabbed my arm, not hard, but firm, and guided me into the hallway outside the private room. The door closed behind us. What the hell was that email? She hissed. I pulled my arm free gently. That was me informing the family about assets they didn't know existed. Assets I've been managing for years. Assets you redirected without telling anyone, I corrected. I saw the statements, Mom. Every withdrawal. Every transfer. I know what you did. Her face went pale, then flushed red. You have no idea what you're talking about. June 2019. $5,000 withdrawn from Grandma's probate account. The same month you told me you couldn't help me when I lost my job. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. That money was for family emergencies. I was family. And it was an emergency. Lauren needed. Lauren always needs, I said, voice steady. And I always manage. That's how it's always worked, right? She gets support. I get self-sufficiency. My mother's eyes went hard. Your grandmother never meant for you to hold this over our heads. She wouldn't have wanted you to be vindictive. I almost laughed. You tried to change the trust. Twice. Grandma told the lawyer no both times. She knew exactly what she was doing, and she knew exactly why she was doing it. The door opened. My father stepped into the hallway. That's enough, he said quietly. My mother spun toward him. Stay out of this. No. His voice was firmer than I'd ever heard it. I've stayed out of things for too long. She stared at him like he'd grown a second head. He looked at me, then at my mother. I knew about the withdrawals. The hallway went completely silent. My mother's face drained of color. Richard. I knew, he repeated. Not all of it. But enough. And I didn't say anything because I thought keeping the peace was more important than telling the truth. He turned to me. I was wrong. And I'm sorry. I felt something crack open in my chest. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But something close to understanding. My father looked back at my mother. Dorothy left that trust to Natasha for a reason. And we both know what that reason was. My mother's hands were shaking. So what now? She withholds the money and ruins Lauren's wedding out of spite? I never said I was withholding anything, I said calmly. Everyone turned to look at me. I took a breath. I'm going to contribute to the wedding. Not $50,000. Not what you demanded. But something reasonable. Something I choose to give, not something I'm guilted into providing. Lauren appeared in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. I don't want your money if it's going to destroy our family. It's not destroying anything, I said, looking directly at my mother. It's just showing what was already broken. Mark stepped up behind Lauren, putting a protective hand on her shoulder. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked directly at my mother. With all due respect, he said quietly, maybe this family needs to figure some things out before we finalize any more wedding plans. My mother looked like she'd been struck. The rehearsal dinner continued, but everything had changed. People ate in near silence. Toasts were awkward. Smiles were forced. And when I left that night, walking to my car under a cold Connecticut sky, I realized something. I wasn't invisible anymore. Real talk in the comments, did I go too far, or was this exactly what needed to happen? The wedding happened. Lauren wore white. The flowers were peonies after all. The venue in Hartford was exactly as gorgeous as promised. And I sat in the third row, watching my sister marry someone who actually seemed to care about what was right. But the family I sat with wasn't the same one I'd grown up in. 3 days after the rehearsal dinner, my father showed up at my apartment in Boston. Unannounced. Alone. He stood in my doorway holding a manila folder, looking exhausted. I need to show you something, he said. Inside were more bank records. Statements I hadn't seen. Account summaries going back 15 years. He'd been keeping his own paper trail. I told myself I was staying quiet to protect the family, he said, sitting at my kitchen table. But really, I was just protecting myself from having to deal with your mother's anger. It was easier to let her make the decisions and pretend I didn't see what was happening. I sat across from him, studying his face. Why are you telling me this now? Because you did something I should have done years ago. You refused to stay silent just because it was easier. He pushed the folder toward me. And because you deserve to know the full truth. The documents showed a pattern even clearer than what I'd found. Years of redirected funds. Educational expenses for Lauren that were listed as family support. Gift amounts that were never equally distributed. My father had watched it all happen and documented it like evidence he never planned to use. I'm ashamed, he said simply. And I don't expect you to forgive me. But I needed you to know that I see it now. I see what we did to you. We sat in silence for a long moment. The trust money, I finally said. I'm setting up a foundation with most of it. Something for kids who have to put themselves through college without family support. Grandma would have liked that. He nodded, eyes wet. She would have. I'm giving Lauren and Mark $15,000 toward the wedding. Not because Mom demanded it. Because I choose to. That's more than fair. And I'm keeping enough to finally do something I've always wanted to do. I'm opening my own consulting firm. No more working for people who undervalue me. My father smiled for the first time since arriving. Dorothy would be so proud of you. I know, I said. She told me. The wedding reception was winding down when Lauren found me near the dessert table. She'd been crying, happy tears this time, mixed with something else. Thank you, she said. For the money. For coming. For not walking away completely. You're welcome. She hesitated. Mom's been staying with Aunt Carol. She won't talk to Dad. Won't talk to me. I don't know if she'll ever forgive any of us. That's her choice to make, I said gently. Just like staying silent was mine. Lauren hugged me then, tight and desperate. I'm going to do better. I promise. No more taking things for granted. I hope so, I said. Because here's what I learned through all of this. Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's strategy. Sometimes it's survival. Sometimes it's the only power you have when everything else has been taken. My mother thought my quietness meant I'd surrendered. She never understood that I was just waiting for the moment when my voice would actually matter. And when that moment came, I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. I simply told the truth. That turned out to be the loudest thing I could have done. Some people will say I should have forgiven and forgotten. That family comes first. That I should have been grateful for what I did receive instead of focusing on what I didn't. But here's what my grandmother taught me: love isn't about what people say. It's about what they do when you're not looking. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to be invisible anymore. My mother still hasn't spoken to me. Maybe she never will. But I sleep better now than I have in years. Because I finally understand something I didn't before. I was never the problem. I was just the only one willing to admit there was one. Final question: if you were in my position, would you have done anything differently? And if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, drop a comment. You're not alone. If this story hit home, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because there are more stories out there about people who stayed quiet until they didn't.